Hi everyone, my name is Suma and here's Christopher Titmuss. He's a former Buddhist monk and he's also author of several books on Dharma as well as insight meditation instructor. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you, Suma. Yes.
How are you today?
Fine and well. Early start this morning, getting some writing completed, and nice to see some blue skies above and earth below. All is well.
I think people may be interested in your awakening story on why did you start seeking and when did the realization happen for you?
All right. Essentially, Suma, I don't have that story. I know it's the important one for many people. So I've had the privilege during the life of opportunity for an immense amount of exploration. Those explorations have and continue to contribute to insight, expanding of the heart, staying awake, being a small servant of the Dharma. That's my life there. So I don't have any before and after report for you.
Do you think like that? So there was no gradual progression towards realization.
You're right. So in the reflections and looking back at my life, now in my mid-70s, the tradition and at personal level has often referred to the gradual approach, like you just mentioned. The traditions in the East have referred to the sudden there. And for some, there has been the sudden without the gradual. For some, there has been the sudden, as it were, while engaged in the gradual there. Can't help you on this one. So, if I may say, my thought and my view hasn't been kind of constructed around gradual and sudden. I do not have a way of thinking or remembering at any point in my life like this. So, therefore, don't quite fit into that.
You recently also wrote a blog which kind of addresses this about how there is no past, no present, or to be careful about using words like past, present, and future.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. There. Our way of looking and conversations, like you could say, you and I agreed, we had some communication, and said, let's meet together. So in the past, we made an agreement to meet in the present, and then at some point in the future, later in the day, you make your return. And our world does seem to be very much about past, present and future. It seems like everything is about that, everything. But we can have a power for a little questioning with this. In the Dharma tradition of the Buddha, the Buddha doesn't use too much this language of past, present and future. He speaks more, it's a little bit more precise. There was that which was arising. There is this which, right now, you and me talking together, which is arising. And there will probably or possibly be that which will arise there. And the past influences, the quote-unquote, the present, if we're in touch with it, will influence the future there. But we keep a little questioning, is this the ultimate reality, living in the time of yesterday, today and tomorrow. If we can have just a little, yes, it's a view, you and I agree to it, I just gave the example, millions agree, but could it be this is a kind of human agreement? And if it is very much around human agreement, past, present and future, it can spark a little interest. Maybe there's a completely fresh way of looking which is timeless. And best of teachings, in my view, best of teachings point to that which is timeless. So I'm respectful of time. I've got some pictures I was just showing when I was a baby, when I was a Buddhist monk, when I was teaching, years of passage are going by, aging processes going on so far, comfortably. But there's a knowing of something which is not of that. This is called timeless.
So if I understand correctly, are you saying that the information of past is in the present moment? Yes. And information of future is also in the present?
Yeah, a little bit, but being human, as we are, with the limitations of our life and our experience, we just need enough clarity to see with our past what is supportive and helpful there. In the past, Uma's had engaged in some reflections on Advaita, non-duality. In the past, said, I need to record this, so you put lots of things together, put a lot of effort in, travelled across the pond from the US to here, and so forth there. So it's the past as a good resource, supportive for something which is important for you, as for me as well. The confirmation of it is the guy behind the Buddha, who I'm a big fan of there. But also with our past, we need to know what's not very healthy from the past. Fears, worries, anxieties, self-doubt, self-blame. And to really be clear, there's some habit or pattern here, I need to address it. So clarity is to see what's supportive. Clarity from the past is to see, okay, what do I really need to give some attention to and work with? And rather similarly, going to the future, we could say some of the seeds for the future are here in the present. What am I engaged in the present which gives support to the future? You make some filming, your intention is to share the filming, make it accessible on YouTube, which is a terrific service for people there. And so there's a relationship of past, present and future. But sometimes we get out of touch with the past, out of touch with the present. Wow. And that big empty space called the future. Whoa. A minefield of fantasy, projections, stories, fears, outrageous optimisms, and much more. So so I would not say everything is in the present moment. I certainly don't give a teaching on just being in the now. It's not my teaching whatsoever there, because the now is some outcome of what was. And the now has some conditions for what will be. Timeless is not bound to the time called the past, nor bound to the time called the present, or the here and now, and not bound to the future.
That's lovely. Yes. I feel like you would be the best person to ask this next question, especially because
it's a nice compliment. But you might change your mind after. Sorry, I'm teasing. Go on. All right, so what would be the question that might be?
Especially because you have this background with Buddhist, as a Buddhist monk, which is very traditional, and some of the I wouldn't call them concepts, but some of the speakers among modern non-duality.
Yes.
So I wanted to get some clarity on some of the differences
Yeah,
of
please
traditional
do.
non-duality and the modern.
Yeah.
One of the main that strikes for me is where modern non-duality kind of discourages one from meditation or self-inquiry, that there is no path towards realization, whereas traditional seems to be more accepting of that.
Yeah.
I would love to get your insight on those two differences.
It's an ongoing dialogue and exploration. There are strengths, in my view, and weaknesses in both directions. So, for some people, and if I may say here, so, being in the white-haired club, Dharma teacher, 47, 48 years, so little experience with working with people, etc. So what I mean by that is, there are some people who genuinely find it really helpful to have a sense of a path. It's really important for them. It's important, it reminds them of essential features of the path: ethics, non-violence, non-abuse, non-exploitation, moderation with the lifestyle, looking at diet, looking at our relationship to consumerism. That is part of the path. Real, mindful carefulness in an ethical way. The path also includes, as you pointed out, inquiry, meditation, mindfulness, the depths of meditation, the opening, expanding of the heart. That's the path. The path also includes wisdom and insight and clarity. I feel, from my observation with people, that the language of the path, a bit traditional, but genuinely can be very supportive. And I think it's foolish for an authority, spiritual teacher, Buddhist or Advaita, non-dual or other, to dismiss the path. There are some people who are kind of identified with the path, very much identified with it, as if there's no end to the path. They're always on the path, always practicing, always meditating. Oh, no, come on. And then they need to kind of let go of the path there to be receptive to that which is timeless, to be receptive to a true freedom of being, something which is immeasurable and infinite, and therefore a kind of insight or a letting go of I, the self, on the path. The vulnerability when people hold to the path. The mind, the terror of the mind. How far along the path am I? Am I stuck? Is it 3 steps forward, 2 steps back? Or 3 steps forward, 5 steps back? How close am I to the end, etc.? So some of the teachings, Advaita, there, I take the view that it really has something really beneficial and important to state. That realization can be very, very immediate. Very, very immediate. And that's really a precious reminder to people who are a bit stuck on the path. But to say, oh, there's no path, and dismiss it, sounds to me like clinging to a position that there is no path. And clinging to a position that there is no path is very dualistic. There is no path, there is only this. Non-duality is non-duality. Non-duality is freedom. Non-duality embraces the gradual, called the path, and the goal easily. not one rejecting the other. Helpful?
Yes, so if I understand correctly, you're supportive of both no path as well as path.
Exactly, yes. Because the teachings, in our privileged position of being the servants of the Dharma, really need, I feel, to listen very mindfully and carefully to what the priority and the needs are of the human being who's in front of us. To say to somebody, say there's no path, the outcome of that could be a feeling of, well, what's the point of doing anything? What's the point of coming to a satsang? Because that's a path. I'm at home, oh, there's a satsang on in my town or in India or somewhere, I go to the satsang. That's a path. Sitting, giving attention to the teacher, etc. I'm engaged in that because I feel I will get benefit from it. So, and people do great benefit. I just think one has to be a little careful, mindful of rejecting of one and holding to the other. And some people, just finally, may hear a lot of language about there is only the now, you are pure consciousness, there is nothing to be done, you're already liberated, etc. there. Lots of people will hear it and put their hand on their heart and say, frankly, I don't feel that. Frankly, you may say it to me 1,000 times a day. It's just not ringing in the deep of my being. And therefore some people say, I need some practice. There is some obstruction which is not allowing me to hear what's profound and liberating. And when the person starts to work with their obstruction, it's called the path.
And the second difference I've noticed is with traditional paths, it seems like they do emphasize, there is some emphasis on ethics, morality, compassion, whereas in modern non-duality, it seems like those things are not, like there is no good and bad.
Exactly. I love, Advaita world. It's got some weak links. And if there's so much emphasis on the ultimate in the teaching, so much, it can be a blind spot to much else. So if issues are not discussed and explored around use of resources, around materialism, money, sexuality, how we live, the quality of the life. If that's not touched upon, I think it's a huge blind spot. It was less kind of necessary for those who are monks and nuns. There is already an immense amount of renunciation. One doesn't have to say to practicing monks and nuns, oh, you've got to change your lifestyle. They're already living the yogis and the swamis and the sadhus, they've let go of a lot of materialism, which allows and gives the opportunity for more space, because material world is not so impactful. And that can provide more insights and realizations and discoveries. I think it's genuinely beneficial to leave no stone unturned. We can talk about anything and everything, because if we know what freedom is, we can explore freedom and ethics and lifestyle and relationships and sexuality and money and the past and the present and the future. We have freedom to explore. And I think it's well worth keeping it alive. And not just keeping it down to, oh, you are pure consciousness, you are cosmic, you're hey, come on.
Do you think a lot of messages in non-duality, they are more leaning towards the ultimate oneness and denying the individuality?
It's to be fair to the good teachers who are around, both in all the traditions, the yoga, the Buddhist tradition, the non-dual tradition. In a way, freedom, the liberation of the human being, one's got to be free in both directions. So what I mean by that is that sometimes non-duality, and in the Buddhist world as well, that currently there's a lot of emphasis on oneness. And oneness has become almost an alternative word to non-duality. People almost used interchangeably. But it's not deep enough. So what I mean by that is the experiences of oneness are really precious and important and significant as well. But there's also in life the experience of two-ness. And two-ness, there is Christopher and there is the material world around. Two-ness, yesterday and today. Two-ness, black and white. Two-ness, there is some thoughts, and then there's some letting go of thoughts there. Freedom embraces oneness, two-ness, and also diversity from all the social diversities, and sentient life diversity. So I would hesitate to elevate oneness as kind of supreme. I like two-ness. I don't see what the problem is. And I like diversity. My grandchildren are Anglo-Caribbean. And when my daughter told me she was pregnant, she was 18 years of age, and she asked me a few years ago, she said, "Do you remember the first thing that you said when I told you I was pregnant?" I said, "No, I can't remember." And she said that the father, he's from the Caribbean, and she said, "The first thing that came out of your mouth was, 'Wonderful, we need some colour in the family.'" And that, I have the privilege of 10 years in the East. I've spent more than 7 years in India in my life, as well as Thailand and other places. I love the diversity, and I love the oneness. I like the two-ness. I think we can be free in all directions, not have a absolute.
Do you also sense that some of the messages in the modern non-duality, it's a little bit anti-traditional?
I think those that I know, and I need to include myself here. So as we mentioned a little while ago, just go to the personal for the moment. In 1967, referred to 1967 as the summer of love. And then a few of us, not that many at that time, hitchhiked across to India. And India was a kind of the Shangri-La of the hippies. It was the Garden of Eden, it was Nirvana, it was the whole idea of making the journey to be in India was there, and it was an important place and point for all of us, and those kind of explorations. What was the point that you mentioned earlier? Just like
the modern non-duality is kind of a bit anti-traditional.
Yes. So some of us, like me, 10 years in the East, I had a very formal vipassana insight meditation training. I didn't become a monk because I was unhappy. I didn't become a monk because I thought I had any personal problems. I had no existential crisis. There was nothing like that. I'd been on the road for 3 years, absolutely loved the freedom of being on the road, and I simply felt this is the time for the inner journey. And then, and this is the issue of the time, what is it within the classical, formal, traditional training which is really useful, really worth keeping in heart and mind and really applying, and what is it that needs some change because it's got kind of a lot of religion in it, the flowers, the candles, the incense, the devotion to the master, all that's very traditional. And some of us say, and that's not my cup of tea, not my cup of chai, I would say in India, not there, but the exploration brings about the changes there. And it takes some wisdom. So there's this lovely batik which I got in India, in the market. It's been hanging on this wall for 30 years and it's something which I, obviously enjoy and appreciate. You can see the gods. See Shiva here and Parvati there, and who's it? Yeah, Shiva and who's it? Blue, probably maybe Krishna and Radha or
Lakshmi.
Oh, Lakshmi, yeah, of course, yeah, exactly. But it's religious forms and art which I appreciate. But as a Dharma teacher, I'm just teaching the Dharma without all the religious stuff. But at home, wherever you go in this house, you'll see all of that. So, what's worth keeping in the tradition? What's worth letting go of or not applying for the West? And that exploration, I think, is still going on.
So, it's about picking things that are suitable and working out.
Yes.
And leaving that are not working out.
Yeah, exactly. But always a delicacy. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is, in the spectrum of people that I work with, yes, so there is a discernment with, and what I mean by that is that I think the people that I work with, some prefer the language of spiritual to religious. Some have no preference for either language there. Some have a feeling towards classical, traditional form. Some feel themselves to be a Buddhist and appreciate the temples, the monasteries, tradition, and so forth. I personally respect and give support to what people's sensitivities are. I don't like to say, oh, you're obviously attached, you're caught up in Buddhism, or the tradition, or the forms, or the rituals, or whatever. It may be part of the person's journey at the time, and to dismiss it and put it down, I think is foolish. It's a kind of rejection which leaves people misunderstood. And one example of it would be the God language. Whoa, it's a minefield. So it's got such a duality to it. You either believe in God or you don't believe in God. This is a duality. And so for some people, not because even of upbringing, may have a deep sense of comfort with the God language. Really, really quite at home with it there. And others, get me out of here. I don't want to hear this word G-O-D, it reminds me of etc. Dharma, teachings, is non-dual. It's not prejudice for God language, but it's also not prejudiced against it. It's recognizing in the heart of human beings, some have a comfort with the language of God, and others don't, and others are not sure. And it's a certain kind of trust that people do their practice, do their meditations, expand their heart, they'll find that which is supportive for them, for their liberation, for their understanding of the timeless and more.
And I think it's okay to keep an open mind.
And completely. And those of us who, as I say, sit on the throne in the Dharma hall, sitting on the throne in English has two meanings you can change. One is, this is what the Queen sits on, and the other, the throne is called the toilet. You can, as teachers, we sit on the throne, you can decide whichever. And it's the keeping of the open mind is really, really, really important, but with a quiet clarity to it. I mean, I don't have an open mind about the support of violence and war. I don't have an open mind which says, oh, everything is perfect. Not the world that I live in. It's a romanticised view of the world. I don't have an open mind that you should just go and get what you want, everybody should get what they want. No. That I have a mind and a voice of concern and criticism there, and pointed to the consequences of the greed and the blame and the anxieties, etc. So it's looking carefully with this. Recognising where people are and responding to that, rather than rubbishing or putting something down.
Yes.
We need to understand the religious sentiments of people, to understand the spiritual sentiments, and to understand those who prefer not that kind of language. Yeah.
So it's inclusive.
Yeah, inclusive. Yes. Yeah.
You have this unique experience of studying this subject in Eastern world as well as in Western world. What are some of the differences and similarities you have
between East and West? I have the blessing of the annual visit to India. I've been teaching in Saranath, where the Buddha gave the first teachings annually since 1999. Teaching in Bodh Gaya since 1975, etc. So it's kind of a mixture of Thailand, Thai monasteries where I teach, but also India, which I have a deep connection with the spiritual India. And there are differences, some simple ones. There's something progressive that is taking place in the West. So what I mean by that is, Eastern religion is still, sadly, very patriarchal. Buddhism is patriarchal. And therefore the voice of women, but also the voice, in fact, of householders has hardly been heard. So the West is changing that significantly. In the network of teachers that I work with, pretty well 50-50, women and men working together, no gap, non-dual in the very best sense of things there. Another aspect is of the benefit that we have, all these teachings or the kind are rather confined to the country. So India is a bit more diverse, but Thailand, Burma, Myanmar, Sri Lanka is very Theravada. Japan, Korea, very Zen. Tibetan Mahayana, very Tibetan Mahayana. But we, in the West, we've got the privilege of access to the diversity. You and I could go to a Tibetan retreat if we wanted, we could go to a yoga, we could go to Advaita, come to a retreat with Christopher or somebody else. We have tremendous variety. I like that diversity. I would hesitate for any student or practitioner to confine herself or himself to one teacher. It's a liberation teaching, not getting into a cage with one teacher and not giving oneself the freedom to explore anything outside of it. I think that's there. The concern that I have, that's the positive. Diversity, there, non-patriarchal, a lot of good friendships. So it's less formal there for many of us there. But there are aspects as well which we in the West need to sit up and take notice of what is being neglected. To take two examples, contemporary ones. Hear the word yoga in the West. Primarily, people think of the asanas, the posture. This is typical West. It's pick and choose. Oh, I need to have more harmony of body and mind. But yoga is a tradition. And it's not the preservation of the tradition that doesn't interest me. But yoga is karma yoga. Yoga is dhyana yoga. Yoga of meditation, so the yoga of meditation, the yoga of service, karma, jnana yoga, of knowing what really matters and is deep. Bhakti yoga, what's worth life being devoted to. So the West, it picks and no, leave all that. We'll just take the asanas. Whoa, that's foolish. I speak regularly with yoga teachers who realise this, and many of my good friends who are yoga teachers live incredibly modest lives. I mean, they're yogis. You know, they're living in a room like this in somebody's house and just offering yoga service to people. Beautiful there. And sometimes get the opportunity to speak out. It's rather similar with the mindfulness world, which has rocketed in public interest. And mindfulness does offer precious tools for calm, for reduction of stress. Sometimes it's the first step in the path. People say, hey, what's this? Wow, this is really helpful. Is there anything more? Yes, just mindfulness to reduce stress. This is kindergarten. This is the beginning. And there's a huge exploration, and people say, well, yeah, let me follow, there. But at the moment, mindfulness, like yoga, has got isolated. There's not enough reference to the ethics. It's often being used to make one more productive, efficient, generate more energy. Why? To give support to the corporation's profits. That's what it's about. So mindfulness and yoga got to be seen in the bigger picture. And it's an error of judgment to reject and just keep what's comfortable for the West. That's my view.
And what are the problems you have noticed in the East?
In the East, they're a little bit similar to the West, and insofar as the climate or the culture, if it is a culture, that we live in is so intensely material based that matter ownership, possession, money, personal success has such a presence, a self to it. It's so strong, it's widespread. And the outcome of all of that in the East, as in the West, is that there is a real neglect of a deeper exploration of life. So life gets far too concentrated around I, me and my, or I, me and my family. And there's a lack of expansiveness and vision and depth there. And it's the problem in the East with this and the problem in the West, I think it's now very, very similar. We see it in India as a good example. Huge economic development, living in the same spell as numerous other countries there. But it's hard, as an example, to name today Indian Advaita teachers. It's hard to come up with names.
Yes.
And that's in this millennium. So when I was in India in the late 60s, in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, always people, always knew, go see this teacher, go to Dayananda and Sri Nisargadatta and Krishnamurti and others teaching, precious and beautiful teachings. They've all gone, and it's hard to there. But Advaita, or neo-advaita, Advaita, there's a lot, but the Westerners, etc. So it needs to kind of reconnect with its soul a bit more, in my view.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I was trying to find Indian teachers who can talk about this subject so that I can interview them. I couldn't come up with a lot of names.
No, it isn't. It genuinely isn't easy, and it's unfortunate because some still have a deep attraction to going to India, still going to Bodh Gaya and Sarnath and Tiruvannamalai and Dharamsala and Rishikesh and other places, and some do make a really precious and important connection, but it's not so easy. That's how it is.
Why do you think that kind of got lost?
I have a friend. His father is Indian, mother is German. He did a retreat with me in Bodh Gaya over 20 years ago, and then he went to BHU. His home was in Germany, but he went to BHU, studied Sanskrit, and has become a Sanskrit Pandit. So I asked him, how is the world of the Sanskrit Pandits? He said, unfortunately, many young Indian people have no interest. They think it's irrelevant. They can't see any point in the Sanskrit teachings. It's not in touch with the real world, etc. So when a country like it in the West, India's not like any different from anywhere else, gets so concentrated on economic growth, making money, having a new car, and so much pressure in the education, the deep things of life get quietly marginalised as not being in the real world. And that's unfortunate. So things go in cycles, and all being well, it will regenerate there. So some of us just quietly keep doing what we're doing, and patiently something. Because there's definitely no fulfillment in consumerism, not a chance, not a chance. And there's no tradition in the West of sustained practices. The East, in the yoga tradition, in the Buddha Dharma tradition, and other traditions, have a whole range of practices. And that's why the interest and the exploration emerging out of the East is really having a deeper impact in the West. Because we need it. We need it, my goodness.
My next question
Yes.
was about liberation. Some teachers say that there are different levels of liberation. Do you think that's true, or that is just creating more concepts?
One has to be... I hesitate with the word what's true and what's not true, because I have no interest, and nor is it important to tread on toes anywhere. But more importantly, we kind of support and protect truth by remembering that those words which come out of our mouth is a view about something. It's a view. May have a lot of good experience and history view. So one or two views. One would be, there are many levels of liberation. Others will say, no, there is only one liberation. There's only one primary experience, or whatever. And both positions, the authority, can be completely convinced about. It's a bit dualistic. It is one or it is many. No, carefully with the view there. So, once again, from the standpoint of experience, this is the criteria here, there are people, and having the privilege of meeting with thousands and thousands over the years, there are people who genuinely have one deep, profound, liberating experience, and there's no more any levels of it. It really, something profoundly transformative has taken place. And to that, marvellous. Music to the ears of a Dharma teacher to listen. There are others from experience, which is valid, to be respected, and she or he will say to me, to use a metaphor now with you, the Buddha used this as well. I've had a taste of what freedom really is. I've had a taste. I realise, many ways to say this, I realise, wow, time means past, present and future is a kind of mental construct. Yeah. I divide the day up. Morning, afternoon, evening, before, during. I divide things up. Wow, so if I'm not dividing, then it's indivisible. It's infinite, because I'm not dividing. Wow, there. And for some will say, gosh, I've had a taste of this. And then perhaps I might see her or him later, or email, or whatever it might be. And the person will say, do you know, Christopher, I had a taste of that, but I realised I've come to another level. I didn't realise there are really different levels of what this freedom is all about. And I say, brilliant. Don't get stuck on one level then. Keep it open, keep exploring. So experience says, yes, the singularity of the transformative, the once and for all, is in the potential of the human being. And experiences can show there are different kind of levels. And that is a confirmation of what a non-dual wisdom is about. Not being tied down.
I like how inclusive you are.
Well, look, so, thank you for the kind words. I mean, look, this diversity. Are we going to say, oh, no, oneness or inclusivity, but not that. No. The inclusivity is the confirmation in this sheer diversity. So as liberated, free human beings, it's a great challenge to be fully inclusive, because life is fully inclusive. So just reflecting that, really.
I wanted to also ask you about how in traditional non-Advaita, there are some ideas, not non-Advaita, traditional Advaita.
You can say non-Advaita, so carry on, I get the point, go on.
There are some ideas about how once the liberation happens, a person can develop certain powers or they can perform miracles. What is your take on that?
Well, I'm curious, what in the good meetings that you've had, just in a general way, any specifics that have been said about certain powers or miracles? What comes to mind?
For me, I've just read in books.
Read, yes. Mm-hmm.
So, for example, healing powers. That's one example.
Yeah, I see. Both in my years in the monkhood and subsequently to it, when the heart and the being and consciousness really expands, the energies can flow much more easily. There's less tightness, contraction, and all that can go with it. And I've witnessed with conversations and communications where there's been a change taking place in which the energies are really moving well and easily, and some extraordinary rapid healing has taken place. And shouldn't underestimate as human beings, the consciousness which can open and expand, and that which was sickness or pain or whatever just can be healed there, which sometimes seems miraculous there. Miraculous means we can't explain it. Well, it's not miraculous. The causes and conditions allow that. It happens as well that a person may have contact with another person just by eyes and maybe touch, the kindness of the gesture, and the authentic expressions of love is being received by the other, whoever she or he may be, and out of that something deep is touched there. And again there's some healing, and there's a certain kind of, with love especially, of all the deep things of life, there's something powerful about it, extraordinarily powerful about it, which can really and does really serve people. And these teachings, as much as you and I will speak about non-duality together, and we speak about practices, as much as we speak about non-duality and East and West and yoga and Buddha Dharma and much more, it's also speaking about the power of love. The most authentic confirmation of being awake and liberation is love. More than anything else. That might show itself as empathy, real sense of connection and sensitivity, respect for the other. The acts of kindness. It can show itself in romantic love, in appreciation, which is a form of love. The acts of service to the other to relieve suffering, compassion. It's in the presence and the potency of love which touches us mostly. And liberation, awakening, and all the enlightenment, all these big buzzwords which we hear. Down to earth, it's still about human beings bringing the very best out of us. And one of the words we use is love.
In your experience, have you come across a lot of people where liberation has happened, and are you noticing that it's happening to more? That realization is happening to more and more.
It's interesting. This one friend. He put together a book about on this kind of question, or this kind of theme. A little bit like one of the earlier questions from you. My mind doesn't go in the more or less category. In a way, it might sound a bit odd, but I'm not too concerned if it's more or if it's less or if it's much the same or whatever. It would be a little bit, for me, a little bit hard to make a decision about it in that. I mean, certainly in the space of 1 or 2 generations, the exploration of these areas is certainly growing considerably, particularly from the time when I left England to what's happening now. So there is much more diversity and exploration there. People's sense of being awake, staying awake, not sleepwalking through life. There's plenty of wonderful expressions of that, some of whom are sharing and teaching, some of whom just quietly, modestly, humbly getting on with their life, but have very deep realizations. Others are engaged in, might be organizing and giving service to people, etc. And it's really precious and important to know. The kind of criteria is not so much if it's more or less there, but it's much more in if something is deep and profound, it really stays steady for a long time, be one, and it gives that woman, that man, enough wisdom and clarity to deal with what's difficult. The metal gets tested in the fire, and life will bring all of us some kind of fires. It has to. And the steadiness and the working with it, those challenges will come. And even if it was just a handful of people, it's not, but if it was just a handful of people, I would just find for myself that handful of people can make a huge difference to the world. Make a huge contribution to a life of love and wisdom. So, more or less, non-dual.
We were just earlier talking about your book on freedom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you have interviewed a lot of people on the subject. And you have also interviewed Jiddu Krishnamurti.
Yes.
Can you comment a little bit on what that experience was like, meeting him in person?
I first listened on tape to him in 1968. And I had the wow. I mean, I was on the road, travelling hither and thither, exploring, deep appreciation for hippie life, love, peace and harmony, spiritual values, blah, blah, blah. Then listen, whoa, this is one cool guy. And really, really, really appreciated the unambiguous clarity of view. No fluffing around with Krishnamurti. Whoa, straightforward. I really appreciated that. So I would, when opportunity allowed, lend an ear. And when I came back in 1977, after my 10 years in the East, I went to Brockwood Park. Actually, the Brockwood Park School, some of the students, I just got invited yesterday to join some of the Brockwood Park students. Anyway, so would go and listen there, and 2 or 3 of the teachers at Brockwood Park had been on retreat with me. Krishnamurti, for all his questioning of authority, when it was suggested that Christopher might offer some teachings, he wouldn't allow it. And I had lunch with him a couple of times, and still have much love and affection for him. And then I did the interview. You read it. It became, in the small circles, a little bit well known. It got reproduced loads of places. Didn't go viral, but this is 30, but it did the rounds. And if you read it, you can see it's a little bit like 2 ships passing in the night. So we're sitting on a sofa like this. And Kay's view of what meditation is very much Kay's view of meditation. But he speaks about, this is what meditation is, and anything else is not meditation, it's concentration. Whoa, wait a minute. And so the dialogue, like this. But what the interview, because it was only in audio, misses was the amount of playful affection going on, which couldn't get recorded. Holding hands, for example, stroking the shoulder, both directions, except very warm and playful, but with this, 2 ways of looking at something. You'll see, you can see the hiccups in there. And at one lunch, I'm very much into protest. I think it's a spiritual commitment is protest. Protest against the system, protest against war, protest against environmental destruction. I'm very active with these things. There. And he said to me at the lunch, some posters were put out about joining a march against nuclear weapons. Isn't it? Mid-1980s. And he said, why are they doing it? Because the Brockwood students were going on the march. Why are they doing it? And I laughed. I said to him, I thought you gave teachings on questioning of authority. He went quiet. That's what a demonstration is. It's questioning authority, abusive authority. So a wonderful, articulate, really kind, good, really good soul, but a little bit of questioning as well.
Thank you for sharing that profound experience.
Oh, thank you.
It seems like different speakers on non-duality
Yeah.
have different take on free will. Some completely deny it.
Oh yes, there's another minefield.
And there are some who will say that, I wouldn't say I've seen this among non-dual speakers, but some spiritual teachers, they talk about being able to create your own reality. So these are like two opposite views, where one denies the free will, where the other encourages you to manifest your reality.
The two of them kind of deserve each other. Shouldn't say that, but yeah. So what do I mean by that? It's with a deterministic view. Sometimes in the spiritual, philosophical, scientific circles, our life is completely determined by our past, by our evolutionary past, by our biological past, by our family past, there. And then the scientists come up with the view that in the brain, the decisions are made, and then a fraction of a second, or even up to 5 seconds later, consciousness, it reaches consciousness, so to speak, and then the consciousness makes the decision, but the decision was made prior to the event. So this also then gets used, our life is completely determined by, and we deceive ourselves and each other in thinking that we have a choice, and science has proved it, evolution has proved it, biology has proved it, etc. But we don't believe it. No matter who it doesn't. One can express the view till the cows come home. And the thought will still arise, I'm thirsty, I think I'll choose to have a cup of tea, or I'll choose to meet with this person, etc. We live life in either sometimes there is the impact of the past on the present, and it's really problematic, and we feel paralyzed, and we feel we can't make any choices, we feel trapped, and we feel a prisoner to the past. It's like just having a conversation with my daughter, because she's working with families in domestic violence who are traumatized by the history that's going on in their household. It's not easy to get out of. I think a reaction, not a clarity, is then swings to the other extreme. We create our own reality. I think people who think this have completely lost it, completely out to lunch. If we created our own reality, who on earth in the morning would wake up feeling depressed? Oh, I'm feeling depressed. Oh, I think I'll create a new reality. It just do not see the evidence that the self, ahamkara, the Sanskrit, I-making activity, can create a reality. I just do not see the evidence for it there. So certainly the influence inside of us have an impact. Of course they do. There. That which is around us has an impact there. And out of that dynamic, some reality is there. But to give the self the power of the creator, if that was the case, no, who would create unhappiness, depression, confusion, etc.? So I don't buy it. And there is some middle ground, middle way, between self-created reality, one, and my life is determined, therefore there's no freedom of choice. I'm not so sure about holding to either of these positions. That's all. And by not holding, to me, it feels more free to explore, so that sometimes I'll give you an example, a small example. I was sitting in the coffee shop this morning. I'm a poet, so I write poetry. And there's a poetry competition. So I thought I'll enter it. And then, out of the blue, the theme of a poem just sprung out. And it went from somewhere inside, and the theme burst out there, and with it, the imagination I've got a theme for the poem, I'll put it in for the competition. I don't know where it came from, it just popped out, and yes, etc. And that was one's reality in the moment, the creative expression there. Sometimes there is the past, and to me, the exploration of the past is also obviously very important. And as mentioned earlier, what's in the past is helpful and wise and skillful. You and I can speak in English together, so we've learnt this and we can apply this. And what in the past is obstructive. But I don't like putting the word free will, another stepping on the toes a little bit, because the will, if it was free, then whatever we will, we could do. We need a lot of cooperation there. Plus, so the will is dependent, it's not free. The will needs intention and motivation. It needs energy. It needs interest. It might need some knowledge, and some skill. So how can the will be free if it requires all these supports? So free will is not my cup of tea. You make your own reality is not my cup of tea. There's no such thing as choice. It's also not my cup of tea. There we go. That's how I look.
So you have kind of like a middle ground.
Yes. I use the language of the middle ground or the middle way, so that, although I'm not an Advaita teacher, as I mentioned, but a middle ground makes the duality, the Vaita, the duality, more clear. Because I don't mind duality at all. There's the duality of violence and non-violence. I'm in the non-violent tradition. There's a duality of kindness and anger. I'm in the kindness tradition, etc., etc. I don't mind the duality, and I make the quiet choice. Non-violence, kindness, and many others is where I put the priority and try to dissolve that which is not that. So duality is fine, and in some areas the non-dual, not creating my own reality, not being completely a prisoner to the past, not bound in either of those dualities.
And when it comes to the world of science, logic, or rationality,
yes,
these subjects kind of get dismissed, that there's no evidence for these things, and it gets dismissed as irrational, or it's just one person's belief.
Yes.
What is your comment on that?
I have, with the travels and the meetings with people, lots of time and exploration. So you're right. Some people it's quite sincere. They just don't buy it, or don't trust it, or don't get confused, or don't understand it. There are some who've just, it's a kind of cynicism immediately without any experience. So, if, for example, if you take, say, a basic mindfulness practice or a basic meditation, and the person thinks, oh, it's all this spiritual, mystical stuff, da, da, da. It's impossible to persuade the person by reason when the other person is trying to persuade one by reason as well. You understand? I'm not going to be able to convince somebody that it might be beneficial and useful to be grounded, to find inner peace, to be more clear, and to respond more effectively in this world. I can't convince them that the practice, the mindfulness, the meditations, the yoga will help. So, what I say to the person, all sorts of voices, but one of them will be, go and do a retreat. So rather than judge before experience, get the experience and judge after. And if it's no use, well, you might have just wasted a weekend. But it might be. So experience first, talk after. And at that point, it's easier for myself a little bit, because I have no interest to convert, persuade, tell people. I don't care if they want to meditate or not, if they want to argue about it or not. But I do say with lots of other things, experience takes priority. You know, when I hear people talk about the Muslim community, the widespread Islamophobia, the anti-Semitism, how much contact, or is it just a media image? And as I said to one person who was clever, bright, PhD, putting down Muslim community. So I just said to the person, how much contact have you had? And he said, well, and he said, what about you? And I said, I can tell you how much contact I've had with the Muslim community. Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Muslim India, Malaysia, Indonesia. I've spent years in the Muslim communities. I've been to Palestine every year for the past 30 years. I said, who am I going to listen to? Someone like you? Or am I going to listen to my experience? That's the difference. And in our school in Bodh Gaya, we had 600 children. I refused, as the founder of the school, to have a Buddhist school. Just not my cup of tea at all. But I said, an interreligious school, I mean, count me in. I'll support it. I'll do the fundraising and other. So we've got the Hindu kids and the Muslim kids and the Buddhist kids and the secular kids, you know, and Christians, head teachers, a Catholic nun, Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhist teachers, and secular, all cooperating and working together as an example of diversity and oneness working together. Things can be done, but unfortunately, as we know, often up against the prejudices, not based on actual experience, but we're in the tradition of experience, more powerful.
It's more powerful than the influences created by media.
Oh, isn't? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely there. And unfortunately, one of the difficulties is in community, in social life, in society, that the voice of the majority, white, male, educated, etc., easily becomes the voice at the expense of the other, which includes many women, it includes many kids, and it includes the diversity of culture, colour, religion, beliefs, tradition, much, much, much more. The majority fails to understand the deep wishes and needs of the minorities. And this is a major dualistic problem.
So one common concept that goes around in the about the non-duality subject is how everything is kind of meaningless, or everything is kind of there's no purpose to it. That concept maybe it's freeing for some people, and maybe it can create a sense of freedom because you're not attached to anything. But for some other people, they may be vulnerable to that message, and it may create a deep sense of
exactly. You've absolutely 100%. But you just about interrupted. A deep sense of what?
Depersonalization.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you have an advice on how to protect people who are vulnerable to that.
Yes. The empathy, which is in a way the confirmation of love, must take, for me, priority over the view. And it's unfortunate that sometimes the view is important. So one view which gets put out, life is meaningless. We're just here, we live, we die, nothing really. So one has the kind of some will adopt the view, life is meaningless, you just get on with it as best you can, we're all going to die. It's kind of, and it feeds into, for some people, self-doubt. What's the point? Worthless. We're all going to die anyway, nothing really matters. And if a person is vulnerable to depression, then a person who is being looked up to, the authority figure, can have an enormous amount of impact through this dismissive thing about life. Quite forgetting, if it's a teacher, that they're obviously giving their personal life a lot of meaning by teaching. They haven't got a leg to stand on. Because if that's what the person understood, the person has no business teaching, because life is purposeless and meaningless, and therefore so is teaching. So they got purpose and meaning, but everybody else, whoa. Too much. It's too much to hear. But people are nervous about addressing the authority figure. The other extreme is a construct in the mind of I am determined to, a lot of energy, I've got purpose and meaning in my life there. And it's very vulnerable as well. It only takes one small event. The wife, the husband moves out. The kids refuse to contact their parents, or whatever it might be. And that whole construct can crash, and the person's not prepared. So they had, to give us an example, a successful businessman came on a retreat with myself. He'd made bucket loads of money, super wealthy, but there was some doubt going on. So he thought, oh, I'll go and see. I'll do a weekend. It was only a weekend retreat here in Britain. And he came and he sat for the one-to-one, they're usually for about 10 minutes. And he started crying. This man aged about 60. I just waited and waited. And he said, I just was in the meditation hall, just sitting, and he said, I've just realised I've completely wasted my life, and most of it is gone. He said, I've obsessed every day about making more and more money. That's all I ever thought about every day. Got wife, got kids, but it was always money came first, making money. Completely wasted my life. And I said to him, you're right. You blew it. And not saying, oh, everything's okay. No, no. He said it. That's his experience. I'm not going to contradict him. So I said, yeah. Anybody who spends their life thinking about money has wasted it. Because there's much more to life than that. So I said, all right. What are you going to do? You've got a fresh start. You got, all being well, you've got a few years. What are you going to do? And he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got this business, I employ all these people. What am I going to do? And then he said, what do you think I should do? And I said, the first thing that came in my mind, I said, go to India. And I said, if you do, make sure you send me a postcard. 2 or 3 weeks later, I had a postcard from Benares. He said, it's the best thing I've done. I've got a new life. Starting a new life from this point. So sometimes it's, gosh, life is da-da-da, but that really, in this case, making money, really wasn't what it was all about there. It'd be a pity to then draw the conclusion, oh, life just doesn't mean anything. Then something sparks, and there's a change there, but to be mindful, dedications in life are always a little bit vulnerable. That's life.
What are your thoughts on some of the ideas that float around in the New Age circle, where some people talk about ascending to higher dimension?
What would it be that? Because it's a new word to me. So what's ascending to a higher dimension? What's it?
Yeah,
like?
I don't know. Like, these are some of the things, like some of the concepts that, like, and because you come from like such a rich experience, how do you see what goes on for you when you see some of these ideas that float around in the spiritual circle?
Yeah, they tend a little bit to kind of, over the decades now, kind of go in waves. It could be that the concept ascendancy, that someone's got to mention it the first time. So then I hear it, then I start hearing it, etc. Or the mindfulness, the vigilance here, what goes up can come down. That's all. And like the umbrella, I remind myself with umbrella, you see, put the umbrella up, it's an ascendancy of the umbrella, but it's going to come down. And to appreciate, to take some examples, I mentioned to you poetry. I was writing poems for years during the monkhood as well, but then I wanted to go deeper into poetry to learn the meter form. So I went from kind of rough poetry to making more of a craft out of it. Yeah? So there's a certain ascendancy from one to the other. There. I might have another, like yourself, a new area of interest, and one works towards it. Look, look, look. The confirmation of it is right here. Here. But just being mindful enough, the sound might go, the lights might go, you and I might want to go and have a cup of tea or whatever, and it comes to a completion. So I can't imagine, and I don't see any confirmation of it, of continual ascendancy. I don't see the confirmation of, as it were, continual upward evolution. I don't think the world is like that. So sometimes we evolve, sometimes we're stuck, sometimes we're going a bit backwards. You know, I prefer that. Seems to me more honest and true, because sometimes some people's ascendancy is at the expense of others' ascendancy. The rich at the expense of the poor. They've ascended, they got what they want, but how do they get it? Because others couldn't ascend. Mm-hmm. So, yes, wonderful, but in what area?
Do you want to share anything with the audience today?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So, if I may, just to give a general overview and the reflection of the time we've had together, the wonderful questions, and it's basically a few small reminders or points. One is, as we at the beginning, really being mindful of our relationship to the past, our relationship to the present, and our relationship to the future. Much clarity and peace of mind is about the relationship to it. So things may be difficult in the past, may be difficult in the present, and may be difficult in the future. But can we have a relationship even to the difficult, where there's some wisdom and clarity, and what will contribute to that? That would be one area. Recognizing the everyday, relative, conventional importance of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And to ask, not as a belief system, is there a way of embracing past, present, and future, and to have a really deep sense of something timeless? There. Second point I'd like to just mention to your good viewers is bearing in heart and mind some kind of middle way. So if we're hearing too much in the extremes, you create your own reality would be one. You have no choice. You're completely shaped by your past would be the other. To say, is there some middle ground? And that might include times when we really do feel trapped by our past. Okay, what can we engage in to explore to change that? And we have whole networks of people engaged in changing people's past to help them be more happy and calm and clear in the present. Meditation being one. And to look at that spark of the creative that emerges out of us, and it can generate a whole fresh reality, and sometimes a single vision or insight can set us off in a whole new direction in life. We need to be receptive to that as well. The second, and the third is the importance of love, and many ways that we can express love: kindness and friendship and warmth and empathy, gratitude, generosity, appreciation, compassion there. But also many ways that get expressed in which some people find it difficult to verbalize love, to kind of say, I love you. Yeah? And some people they show their love not through what they write or what they say, but just through their being, through the small things that they do, showing lots and lots of love to really ensure that love is really primary and it's not dependent on being approved of by others. Sometimes it's also not dependent on our voice, which can be judgmental and harsh. To say, well, love is so powerful. Look at the culture of arts and music. It's nearly always about love. It's so powerful to stay really true to love. So that would be the third. And the final point would be, as we've been touching upon together, the importance of, shall we call it, the freedom of the being. This is very precious. And the fancy word, liberation. And the freedom of the being, in different ways, it might express itself as being free from something that's been really problematic. It's finally over with, that habit, that addiction, that dependency, finally over. Free from. It's a great freedom in life. There's also the freedom to be, and be in the nature, to be alone, the freedom to meditate, and many other ways, just the freedom to be there. And the other great freedom of life is the freedom to respond. You explore situations, you come here, you bring the equipment, you bring a good presence there, you've done lots of homework clearly there, and therefore there's a freedom to respond. And freedom from the problematic past, the freedom to be and the freedom to respond. This is great liberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher. I absolutely loved this conversation.
Oh, thank you. Very kind.
And you have been more than kind during our exchange, as well as hosting this conversation. So I'm very grateful for that.
Okay, so shall we have, what would you like? Tea, or do make a good chai or a juice, or what we can have?
I'd like some tea.
Okay, namaste. Thank you.
And for people who want to reach out to you, the best website would be Christopher Titmuss.
Yeah, there's 5 or 6, but that's probably as good as any. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And thanks for watching.
Thank you.